Flying?
We titled this episode, I Couldn't Imagine, because that's the number one thing people say to me since losing my son Romeo. And I get it. I used to say it too. But honestly, when someone says, I couldn't imagine, it creates distance. It unintentionally says, that reality is too dark, too painful, too far from my own experience, so I won't go there. But the thing is, I couldn't imagine it either. And I still lived it. So now I want to invite you to imagine anyway, because the unimaginable is a part of life. And sometimes, in the deepest heartbreak, that's where the most beautiful connections are explored. I lost my son in a drowning accident on my watch. This episode is the most complete telling of my story I've ever shared, and it's important to me that it's told clearly. Not for sympathy, but for truth. So there's no confusion, assumptions, or filling in the gaps. So I want to clear the air. Not to defend myself, but to take appropriate accountability. And to honor Romeo the way he deserves to be honored. I don't share my story to scare you or make you fearful for your own children. I share it because this story deserves to be told, felt, held, carried. So when I say, imagine anyway, I don't mean literally. I mean, be willing to witness someone else's pain and still lean in. To feel it anyway. Connect anyway. Imagine anyway. Because I'm here to tell you, you can live through the unimaginable and still be open, still create, still love. So thank you for being here. Thank you for listening, and thank you for imagining with us.
You read that for me a few days ago. He said, Connor, listen to this. And you looked up and I was just sobbing at the end.
He was just bawling.
That's what I've had the chance to witness with a front row seat for the last year plus that I've been with Briosha. I don't know Romeo, the 2.5-year-old little boy that is being memorialized on this screen in these pictures. I walked into the studio today and feeling the energy of those pictures. It's so palpable. But I knew early on if I was going to be your person, if we were going to date, like, I couldn't just take the good stuff.
Right.
That I needed to be all in with you with all of those emotions. And I can say that even though I didn't know that little boy, I've grieved him.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot of nights that I've sat with you, as you have too.
Yeah.
And so for people listening, I'll tell you what I've learned from Briosha over the last year. I've learned how close the other side is. I've learned how real emotions and pain can be, and how you never know what people are experiencing or what they're going through. We're so quick to judge people. We're so quick to project on them how we think they should be feeling or how we think they should be doing. But at the end of the day, we're all just trying to be okay in there, inside our head and in our heart. And for those that we love, we want to do everything we can to help them be there. And so I know just in the preparation for this episode, how healing it's been for you already.
Yeah.
How healing it's been for us in our relationship. Just yesterday, as we've discussed this, there have been details about the accident that I didn't know, that I have a swollen face today because I feel like I've felt new things for me. But these are realities that you have lived. They're images that are in your head every day. And you are not only choosing to continue through life, but you're taking something that most people will never have to go through and that they probably even can't imagine, even if they try, and have turned it into something beautiful. And watching the impact that you have as people send you direct messages that are in their time, it's what makes me so excited to be able to help you share your story and to share Romeo's story. And I hope that this comes across in the right energy and the right spirit today.
Oh, well, thank you so much for helping me share this story. It's the greatest gift you could ever give me.
I love you. Let's do it.
Too.
So let's talk about the day of the accident.
Okay.
Did anything happen different that day?
So I remember this day in particular was a really fun day. But I remember this day in particular, there were two things that were different. And these two things stand out. The first is one of my last clear memories with him. We were cuddling in bed, and he had just woken up from his nap, and he looks up at me with his ginormous brown eyes and puts his hand on my face, and he goes, "Mama, am I your angel?" And he's never said that to me before. I remember laughing, and I remember saying, "Yes, you're my angel." And then he laughed, and then he goes, "Haha." He goes, "Am I your stinker?" Because that was a little nickname I had given him, was calling him my little stinker. And I remember laughing and saying yes. So that is my last very clear memory of him.
The day of the accident.
The day of the accident.
Do you think he knew?
Yeah. I think a part of him knew. I think the greater part of him knew and was kind of preparing me a little bit for what was about to happen. And honestly, that moment gave me an anchor to always look back on and know there's more going on behind the scenes. Yeah. A part of him knew. A part of him was trying to let me know that it's okay. I don't have to understand everything. I don't have to understand the why. But there's a greater sense and knowing. The other thing that happened that day that was a little bit different was before we had left the pool this day. And this was the second time we were going to the pool because, like I said, there wasn't a lot to do and we take walks all the time and we were always playing outside. Before we left, it was 7:00 at night and I was trying to think of something to do before going to bed with him. And he goes and he says goodbye to everything in the apartment. He goes, "Goodbye TV, goodbye couch, goodbye Blippi." That was his favorite show. "Goodbye cars, goodbye toys." And in that moment, I thought it was cute. I did not realize until later what that would mean to me forever.
Yeah. Okay, so how we've talked about doing this is, obviously this is really hard to recount the whole thing.
Yeah.
You've told this story many times.
Yeah.
I know the details of this now, so I'm going to paint the picture for those listening or watching at home, and you can, give some added details or how you were feeling and really want to get into this. So what I've understood from this is before his dad comes home, you've got a little bit of time to kill. You go into the apartment complex's pool that you go to multiple times a day, which is gated. And inside this pool area, there's a pool, there's a lifted hot tub, and it's one of those circular hot tubs that has, the round and then the bench inside the hot tub. And then there's like a little lounge area with chairs and play toys and things like that.
Yeah.
It's more of a congregating area.
Mm-hmm.
All right so far?
Yeah, so the lounge area is to the right of the hot tub from where I'm facing, and then the pool is to my left.
Okay. So you walk in and there's really no one at the pool other than one mom and one little boy, and you knew them, right?
Yes, so I had just met them. The mom was a Middle Eastern woman who was new to the country, and we had talked a few times, and Romeo had just made instant friends with her little boy, who was a few years older. He was 4 years old.
Okay. So you walk in, and they come to greet you. They're excited to have friends at the pool.
The mom comes.
Yeah, so the mom comes to greet you.
So I walk in, and the mom... I can still see her face. Her face lights up at the side of us. And she comes to meet me halfway Romeo runs ahead to go and play with her son, who is still playing with his toys at the lounge area where they were.
Yeah.
And so I'm with the mom now who had met me halfway, like I said, and I sit down to talk to her. So she's facing in front of me, so she's blocking my view of both the hot tub and the lounge area.
Got it. So they're in the lounge area playing, Romeo and the little boy, and you had given Romeo the nod like, hey, yeah, it's good to go play with him. And it was typical. Romeo is on your hip most of the time, and he wouldn't have gotten in the water without you most days, right?
Yeah.
Even though, of course, no excuse, but that would have been your typical day-to-day.
Yeah.
Now, without you knowing, the other mom had told her boy that they could go play in the hot tub, right?
Yeah. So I didn't know this actually for a while after. Maybe like I found out a year ago or so that she told me. But yeah, she had told her son, you can go and play with Romeo in the hot tub. And where I went wrong, two things. The first is I took my eyes off my son near a body of water. The second is I made an assumption about where he was. And so I assumed that he was playing in the lounge area with her son.
And the reason you couldn't see that is because you were sitting down talking to her.
And she's like sitting up, or she's standing in front of me blocking my view. I just remember looking up at her.
Yeah. And it's interesting too. I think this says so much about you, but that woman came to you breaking down a little bit about how hard of a time she had had making friends and how she was struggling being there, and you were talking to her through that, feeling like you were being there to support and lift her up.
Yeah, I remember we were talking about how she had a hard time making friends and a hard time finding a job. And I remember putting all of my attention on her for those few minutes.
Yeah.
It was 2 to 3 minutes that I was not paying attention to my son.
Yeah. So 2 to 3 minutes, you still think they're in the lounge area. During this time, you've got some, you've kind of had that feeling in a conversation where you're like, okay, I'm ready to wrap this up. Like, I want to go get with Romeo. And you told me that you were actually kind of waiting for like a pause in the conversation.
Yeah. So I remember 2 to 3 minutes have passed, and then pause in the conversation. And I say out loud, "Where's Romeo?" And I stand up, I look to where I thought he went. I look at the lounge area, he's not there. I scan the area and I don't see him. I see her son who's sitting up in the hot tub, but I do not see Romeo. And so this is the point where I get that feeling, that just oomph in my gut. And I start walking towards the hot tub, and I see Romeo face down in the water. And at this point, everything felt like a dream. None of it felt real. It felt like I was running in slow motion, like running through water itself. Like I get to the hot tub, I walk in all my clothes, in my shoes, and I pull him out, and he's completely limp. He's regurgitating water. I start screaming for help, and I immediately put him on the ground and I start performing CPR. I have taken a class in CPR before, but I don't truly know what I'm doing. I'm just trying to do what I think I need to do. There's people now forming around us, and I can see somebody is calling 911. I can hear people screaming and crying, and I'm sitting there like screaming for help, calling for help, and nobody around me seems to know what to do. So I keep doing CPR. This one kid who I recognize, he worked with Romeo's dad. He comes in and he takes Romeo and he starts doing CPR. He pulls me into his car. Somebody had called an ambulance and the ambulance was on its way. So I'm in the car now and I'm holding Romeo and we're driving to meet the ambulance halfway. We finally find the ambulance and they take him from me. I remember begging them to let me in the ambulance with them, and they don't let me go. So I go back in the car with the kid who had driven me, and his girlfriend was in the front. I was in the back with Romeo, and I remember just being so out of body, so numb, so disconnected to the reality of what had just happened, because I could not even begin to comprehend what was going on. His girlfriend in the front, I remember, was just sobbing and sobbing. And I remember feeling like so weird that I couldn't even feel anything. It absolutely did not feel real. So we finally get to the hospital, and I remember just walking out of the back of that car, and I don't even think I shut the door. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. I walked out. I walked into the hospital, and I'm immediately thrown papers into my face to just start signing. And so I'm signing all these I don't know what I'm signing. Everybody, all the nurses, all the people there, the doctors, they look sick. They look scared. And they look really sad for me. So I remember walking over to the room where Romeo was in. And there's chaos in the room. There's doctors and there's nurses, and everyone's working over his body. And he's still alive at this point. When I had him in the car, he was still breathing. So everybody's working over him, and I'm sitting there just staring through the window, the glass window, and I remember thinking, like, this isn't real. I was just barely holding him. Like, this isn't real. And so I sit down in the chair, and I feel like I'm still holding him, and it feels like he's still in my arms, and I remember just, like, cradling what felt like was him to my body and just sobbing, finally crying. And the nurses, I remember, were just all looking at me and feeling for me. And I had the thought in my head, I need to tell Romeo's dad. And that second, my phone, which I had completely forgotten about, starts to ring in my pocket. So I take it out, and it's his dad. I answer, and he asks me, Briosha, did Romeo drown? So I remember saying yes, and then his voice on the other end, just screaming and crying. And it was one of the worst moments. That moment as well was one of the worst moments I had ever experienced, was hearing his scream on the other end and knowing it was 1,000% my fault. And so he is on his way to the hospital at that point, and I'm still there. The doctor who was working with Romeo comes to talk to me, and I remember him looking at me, and he goes, girl, you better pray for a miracle. And that was the moment that I started to kind of understand what was happening, the seriousness of that situation.
Now, I want to go back and find different portions of that. Thank you for telling all of that. A lot of people ask about the little boy, right? Like, okay, so there was a little boy in the hot tub too. Mm-hmm. From 2 to 3 minutes from walking in the hot tub, them being over in the play area, they must have at some point in that 2 to 3 minutes obviously decided together, let's go to the hot tub, which meant both of them taking their shirts back off, like getting into that little step. Like, that is not a very long amount of time for that to happen. Like, it literally could have been Romeo stepping off that first step as he entered the hot tub, right? A lot of people don't know this about drowning, and it's something you share, but it's silent and how fast it can be. Share that a little bit.
So I didn't know this fully until after, but drowning is the number one cause of death for children under 4 that's accidental. It is fast, it's silent, it can take under 30 seconds for your child to drown, and it's silent. There's no commotion. You're not hearing it. You're not really able to witness a drowning. So the other boy that was in the hot tub with him had no idea. I remember looking at him and he was playing with a little toy car on the water, just completely oblivious to what was happening. And it's not his fault.
Yeah.
1, he was 4 years old, but then 2, he had no idea what was going on. There was no commotion.
Yeah. What did your body do and what did your mind tell you when you saw Romeo face down in the water?
Seeing Romeo face down in the water is something that is etched into my mind. It's something that I can't erase. I see it every time I think of a drowning, every time there's something on a show or somebody mentions water or anything. I see that vision. And the second I saw him like that, I stepped into a dream and I was out of my body. I was detached, so detached to everything that was happening. And honestly, that lasted for months after, up to years, in different degrees, in different ways. But I think that was my body's way of protecting me from the accident, from what had happened and from the trauma. Like if my body wouldn't have put on that protective mechanism, I don't know how I could have survived that moment.
Yeah. We've talked about this before, and I think the analogy is it's like going under general anesthesia.
Yeah.
Right? To where if you were to go have open heart surgery and you weren't given any anesthetic or put under, you couldn't survive that. Like your body would actually panic and you would die if you went through that. Like you have to be put under anesthesia to be able to undergo that type of traumatic experience, right? And I feel as you've told the story and as we've talked, obviously, and gone through your healing process since I've known you, that it was that protective mechanism, that it was like, in order to make it so you could walk away from that accident, like your body went completely numb. And now what we've witnessed over the last little bit is like your numbing
is going away.
Wearing off.
It's wearing off.
Yeah.
And because it's wearing off, or why it's wearing off, is because for the first time since the accident, I'm in a place where I have stability and I have you. Like I have support in a way that I've never had before. And I think that's why now I'm able to finally start feeling things and I'm getting my memories back. That's something that happens that a lot of people don't know, is I lost so many memories after the accident. And I remember, this is crazy, because I remember thinking, like Romeo, he had changed my whole life. Being his mom was the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I remember when he was here wondering, I couldn't even remember what life was like before him. And then after the accident, it was like I couldn't remember what it was like with him. It was just really hard to access that. And every time I try, I would get the vision of the hot tub, of him face down in the water. And recently, and you've witnessed this with me, I've been able to remember more and more and more and more. And it's one of the most painful things ever, because with the memories, I'm also realizing everything I've lost in a whole different sense. But it's such a blessing too.
Yeah. Okay, let's go back to the story. You picked him up out of the water, and his body was completely limp. Were his eyes closed? Was he in any way? Did you feel like he was okay? Did you feel like he was gone in that moment? Like,
So I picked him out of the water, and he was the most limp I had ever felt him. And I just remember being like so shocked at the way his body fell in my arms. And he was regurgitating water with throw up, and his lips were turning blue, and his body was cold, although it was a hot tub. But his body was still alive and like trying to function, but I don't think his soul was there anymore. I think his soul had already stepped out.
from that moment.
Yeah, I just remember like holding his body, and although it was still alive and trying to breathe, I didn't feel him in there. I felt him, but he wasn't in there.
Now, you were with it enough to know, like, I need to do CPR here. And you had taken CPR classes, right?
I had taken one class before.
Okay.
So this class I had taken was years ago. I must have been like 19 or something when I took this class. And so, yeah, I start doing CPR on him. And while I'm doing CPR, I'm like calling for help. I'm asking for help. I'm like looking around to see if there's anybody else who's more capable of doing this, because I don't really know what I'm doing.
Sure.
And as I'm doing it, like, he's just not responding. Like, I'm not getting any kind of response. He's still breathing or trying to breathe, but I'm not getting any kind of response. And then that's when the other kid steps in, and then he starts doing CPR. And I notice he's not getting any kind of response either. And so then that's when he pulls me into his car. I have Romeo in the back seat with me, and I'm still trying to do CPR in the back seat. And I am just like so detached from everything that's happening.
Yeah. And then you're not able to get in the ambulance. Like, why and how? What happened in that moment where all of a sudden now your little boy, like, one, I can't imagine, here I am using the phrase, right? Having your, can't imagine, but I'm going to try to because I love you. Having him on your lap in the back seat of a car like that, but then having him go into an ambulance and you're not able to go in there and watching him go. Like,
Yeah.
What was that moment?
That was like just one of the most terrifying moments in my life, because I knew in that moment that I was just completely out of control. Like, he could have died in the ambulance without me even being there. And that's what I was most scared of. I just didn't want like his passing to be without me. And like I said too, at that point, I didn't know how serious it was, but I also did know.
Yeah. Okay. We'll take a deep breath here. So paint the scene of the hospital a little bit now. So he's in the hospital. He's got all sorts of tubes
Right.
in him. What does he look like? What are they saying to you at this point?
Right. So we're in the first hospital, and like I said, there's nurses everywhere. The nurses were actually very kind to me. It was the doctor that I remember was more like firm when he looked at me, and he was like, "You better pray for a miracle."
Yeah.
And I just remember feeling like this was the worst day of my life, but like probably theirs too. And so the doctor tells me that, and then I had talked to Romeo's dad on the phone, and then they're telling me that they need to life flight him to a better hospital that can properly be able to help his condition. And so at this point as well, there was a priest that was there, and the priest is with me, and we're praying over his body, which is still alive. And the priest is telling me, the doctor had just barely said, "You better pray for a miracle." And the priest is here telling me miracles exist. Like, let's pray. He can make it. So I had two very different contracting things going on at the same time. And so they let me know a life flight is coming. I signed the papers for the life flight. Romeo's dad meets me at the hospital, and we can't go in the life flight. Like, they don't let us go in the helicopter. And so me and Romeo's dad are in the car, and we drive to that second hospital. Is a Sacramento hospital in California. So we're driving, and it's a few hour drive, and I'm in the car, and my person that I call for my family is my brother Lucas. And I call him, and I tell him what happened. And I ask him to let everyone else know because I could not. So that was one of the hardest things he's ever had to do. And then in that moment, I also knew that I had to call Caden's family. So we're in the car, and I call his parents.
And this is their first and only grandchild.
Yeah, this is their first and only grandchild. When we would come back to live in Utah for several times in that period, we would live in their basement. We were very close with them. I considered them family, and they considered me a daughter, I think. So I call them to let them know that Romeo had drowned. And I just remember Caden's mom on the other end just screaming, throwing things, asking me questions, wanting to figure out how bad and how severe it was. When I told her that he had drowned in a hot tub was when she started throwing things. Because apparently something about the hot water is more severe than cold water. So we make the few-hour drive to that second hospital. We get there, and Romeo's already there. He's already in a room. So we go up, and the nurses and the doctors, they give us this little waiting room next to his hospital room that we're able to stay in. And that was very nice of them because usually you don't have that. But I think because our case was so severe, they felt for us. So they let me and his dad have that room. And I remember this room, the lights wouldn't turn off and there wasn't a lot in the room, but there were like these little benches. So for the few days that we were in the second hospital, we had slept on this teeny little bench on the side, him and I, and the light like could never turn off. But like I remember at that point just not even caring, like whatever. It was just nice to have a little place to ourselves.
So now you've told both of your families. The word starts to get out a little bit, and he's still being kept alive on the machines. Mm-hmm. And it's becoming clear that there is a decision to be made.
Yeah.
And then lots of opinions started coming in.
Yep.
And texts.
Yep.
Like, talk about that.
So we had so many people calling us and telling us to pray for a miracle. They were sending us articles of all these miracles that they had witnessed. I remember literally talking on the phone with another mother from Utah who her son had drowned and he was declared brain dead and he made a full recovery. So I'm having people in my ear telling me these things. And then I'm talking to the doctor the next day. So we stay in the hospital. We sleep on that little bench. I remember waking up and I'm talking to the neurologist. And she's looking at me very seriously. And she's handing me his brain scans to look at. And then she lets me know that he is actually brain dead. And there's no activity going on. And there's no chance. And I'm looking at her and I'm just blinking because what? Like I was not even close to comprehending what she was saying. And I remember her repeating herself several times because she could tell that I was just not getting it. And also at this point, Romeo's dad, he was still sleeping. And I remember like not wanting to wake him up because this time in the hospital just felt so like black, like a void of any emotion of anything. And it was like this black cloud that you couldn't escape. And sleep was literally the only relief. So he was sleeping and I didn't want to wake him up out of that. But by the time that he did wake up and she told him the same thing, I remember he looked just as confused as I did.
Huh. So you've talked about being numb. You've talked about this void.
Yeah.
And in this time too, like you didn't even have a change of clothes. You didn't care. Like it was just like you were in a dream, it sounds like.
Yeah, I felt like I was just in a black cloud nightmare dream. And I remember talking to nurses at this hospital too about it being a dream, and honestly, I hoped it was a dream. I'm like, somebody please tell me this is a dream. And them looking at me very seriously and saying, this is not a dream.
Yeah. So you then had a conversation with a doctor that was basically confirming past now just the news from the neurologist that he wasn't around.
Yeah.
And at this point, you started getting signs.
Yeah. So I had two very conflicting ends. I had the doctors telling me that there is no chance and that he is brain dead and that I should start figuring out what I wanted to do. And then I'd have people on the other end calling me, posting, sending me messages, coming to the hospital to talk to me and to pray with me, saying, miracles exist, pray to God, don't trust the hospital, don't trust the doctors. And so finally I was like, I need to go within right now, and I need to ask God myself. So I remember having time of going in, praying, meditating, asking for signs. I wanted to know what is the right thing to do right now, because if there's even a slight chance that he's going to make it out of this, like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do. And the signs I kept getting back were not what I wanted to hear.
Hey, for people that follow you now, you obviously talk about signs a lot.
Yeah.
And obviously we're going to talk about how active he is in your life and how you communicate with him today. But it's really fascinating to me that started with not the answer you want. It wasn't the sign that everything was going to be okay. It wasn't the sign, it was the sign that no, he was gone.
Yeah.
And that actually started with the butterfly.
Yeah.
This is where the butterfly comes into play. Tell the story.
So Romeo's main symbol is the butterfly symbol. And I remember when I kept praying and asking for signs, I just kept hitting a wall. And the wall just kept saying, no, it's time. You need to let him go. And when I was talking to one of the doctors about organ donation, like you said, I didn't bring any of my clothes. I didn't have extra clothes on me. I wasn't even brushing my hair. I wasn't brushing my teeth. Somebody had come, one of my sister-in-law had come and brought me clothes. And so I was wearing one of her sweatshirts. And I didn't even look at it before I put it on, but I'm wearing her sweatshirt. I'm talking to this doctor about organ donation, and he looks at me and he points out the butterfly on my sweatshirt. And he goes, "That's a butterfly. Do you know what a butterfly means?" He's like, "A butterfly symbolizes rebirth and transformation." And I remember just giving him a dead eye. I remember being so pissed that he would even try to go there with me right there in that second. But I didn't know in that moment that later the meaning behind the butterfly for me would be. So it started with the shirt, and there were also butterflies all over the door. And then later, when I was looking through for photos of Romeo, this is for a celebration of life, which we can go into, but I was looking for a photo of him to put on the celebration of life invitation. And the most recent clear, good photo of him was of him holding this big blue monarch butterfly in his hand.
And a butterfly museum.
Yeah, from the butterfly museum. And crazy enough, that's actually where we ended up having his celebration of life, was at that butterfly museum.
Yeah. So what made you feel comfortable and confident making the decision to turn off the machines 3 days later after the accident?
Right. So the accident was July 1st of 2022. And we were in those hospitals for those 3 days. And I had kept asking for signs. I kept hitting a wall. That's when the butterfly symbolism came into play. And at this point, Romeo's dad and I, we had been very disconnected for most of our relationship, but this broke us both open in a whole new way, where we were in the void together. And I had finally felt connected to him for the first time in a very long time. And we both were very on the same page about what to do. Like, he was feeling it too. We both felt very strongly that Romeo was still alive in a sense, but ready to move on from his body, ready for his new life. And we felt that very strongly on July 4th of 2022. And we feel today too that the fireworks every year are such a good example or sign of his new life, of celebration of his old and his new.
Because that's what happened that night.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was July 4th, and we both knew together that it was time to turn off the machines and let him go. That he didn't want to be tied to his body anymore. He was ready to be let go, and there was no chance anyway.
Yeah. What was that like, being in the room when you made that decision?
Like I said, his dad and I had been finally connected, and we felt both very much at peace with that decision. We felt very at peace in that moment too for the whole thing. It was like the accident and everything. We were just at peace at, weirdly enough. And I'd love to say that feeling lasted, but it did last for that decision. So when we were holding our little boy to us, him on one end, me on the other, Romeo in the middle of us, and they turned off the machines, and just feeling his body get all cold and stiff. Him and I were both crying, and we were humming along to a song that was playing in the background. I don't even remember what the song was, but it was just, like, looking back, it's just so interesting that we both were like humming and crying to a song and like even smiling.
And then there's a fireworks show throughout the whole.
And there's fireworks going on behind us. Yeah.
So I just learned yesterday as we were talking about the story that you didn't even go back home. So you're in California at the time, but all of your family is back in Utah. So you never even went back to that apartment complex. You went straight from 3 days into the hospital to the airport and flew back home. And now are around family and everybody and are putting together a memorial service, a celebration of life for him. Like, you never got the chance to take a breath.
Yeah, no, it literally felt like we did that. It was 7 days after we let his body go on July 4th. It was 7 days after that we are doing a celebration of life for him. We ended up having him cremated, and instead of a funeral, his dad and I felt very firmly that we wanted to celebrate his life. We wanted it to be something that was lighter. So yeah, that's what we did. We did that in Thanksgiving Point in Lehi, Utah. And the amount of people that showed up and the amount of support we had was incredible. And it was crazy how fast it was thrown together and how beautiful it was. And I remember I was just in a complete daze. Like, there were photos taken from this point, and I look at those photos today and I'm like, I'm not even freaking there in that photo. I was so removed from the situation. And I mean, that lasted years, but for the first few months, it was just I was so disconnected from everything that was going on. Kind of in La La Land, I'll be honest.
Yeah. You told me something that was interesting, that you had a hard time seeing other people struggle because other people maybe didn't have as strong as anesthetic as you did, right? And you were watching their emotions and then also taking on responsibility for their emotions. Explain that.
Yeah. So I'm a person who is very in tune with how other people feel, and I care about how other people feel. And so with this happening, I think for other people, I'm still in the void. Like, I am deep in the void. And I think for other people, it's able to just hit them a lot faster than it hit me. And they were able to feel all of their emotions right then and there. And so I'm sitting here in my black cloud and I'm witnessing other people and their emotions and how bad they're feeling and how sad they are for me and how they would like wish and hope for me to be okay. And I'm like taking it on me to prove to them that I am okay and I can be okay because I want them to be okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, just the amount of responsibility I felt for everything and for everyone and for the whole accident was huge.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. Did you feel it was your fault? Do you feel it's your fault today? And how do those feelings settle with you?
Yeah, so that's really hard for me because I do feel it was my fault. And I would love to say that I am forgiving myself and all of that, but it's those few minutes like not only changed everything about my life and every way I look at life, but also like I lost my son, and that's something that a lot of other people lost too. So I do blame myself, and it sucks because I know that he does not want me to blame myself.
Romeo.
Yeah.
How do you know that?
Because he tells me through my signs and through my prayers and talking to him. Like I just know like he does not want me blaming myself, and he wants me to be happy, and he's happy on the other side. And I know it hurts him that I am, sitting here.
Yeah. We've talked about this before. And I didn't plan on asking you here or it to you here. Geez, I can't even talk right now. That if he knew that that was going to be his end or an end, right? He chose you to be the one to experience that with, and only you that has that image in your head.
Yeah.
Why?
So I've thought through this a lot. I've wondered so many times, like, what if it was somebody else? Like, why did it have to be me? Like, why was it me who let him down? And for my own end, at the end of the day, I'm glad it was me. I'm glad I was the one who was there. And I know that I can get through it. Like, I know I can. And I think for him, if a part of his soul did know that was going to happen, did know that his life here would be a short one, and his mission was mighty, but his life was short, I do think he would choose to be with his mom for his last day and for his last moments. So it sucks, but I'm glad that it was with me.
Yeah. Other people that may be, you've used the phrase the void or the numbness, other people that may be in that, like, I can't imagine moment in their life right now, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that there is so much more to life and to living than this. Like honestly, my belief in the higher power and my belief in Romeo's continued existence and my continued relationship with him has been everything to me. Like, I really feel that's helped pull me out of the void and helped keep me going and kept me open to create and to love and to everything I am doing right now. So yeah, I would tell them that there is light through the darkness, there is hope, and there is so much more going on behind the scenes than you can even comprehend.
Yeah. And you started to feel that not very long after, when now you go through the opposite extreme of death to life.
Right.
With getting pregnant.
Right.
So a lot of people might look at your story and hear that and look at the timeline and be like, wait, how old is Amara? Were you pregnant when? You got pregnant with Amara 7 weeks after the accident.
I know.
And a lot of people might go, oh, that's a bad decision. Don't do that, right? Like, you were obviously in a numb state when that happened. But it did, and it's also one of the most beautiful parts of this story. Explain.
So a lot of people tell me when they hear about the accident, they're like, oh, I couldn't imagine, right? But for me, I couldn't imagine not being a mom anymore. Like, I'm still numb and I'm still so in the void. And I just lost everything about who I was. Like, I lost my son and I lost myself. And I couldn't comprehend not only losing him, but just not being a mom anymore. And me and his dad, like I said, we were very connected at this point. We were in the void together. And we both felt that we wanted to have another baby in that state of mind. And looking back, I'm so freaking glad we did, because honestly, like, that little girl, she is such a miracle in my life, and she has helped me in so many ways get through this. And I don't want to say, you know, somebody who loses a child, just go have another one, but that's been such a blessing for me in my life. And so much love within that too. So yeah, I did find myself in the situation where I lose my son and now I'm pregnant with my daughter. So I literally was grieving life and creating new life.
Yeah. Now, I know we've talked about this before, but during that time, you've said how you felt guilty about every emotion that went through your body.
Yeah. So I'm pregnant with my daughter. I'm grieving my son. And I feel guilty for being sad. And I feel guilty for being happy. And, you know, within this extreme of feeling happy and feeling sad, of feeling hope and feeling grief, I've realized that it's not one or the other. They don't sit side by side. They're together in one. And you have to accept that everybody, we all hold light and we all hold dark within us. And we have to accept all of the things, all of the feelings.
You've told me how during that time you would go on those same walks every day. You'd go watch the playgrounds with Romeo's friends without him there, and
Yeah.
you have Amara growing in your belly.
Yeah.
How did you feel during those times?
I remember just feeling so confused. I just was so confused. I'd go to that same damn little park that we'd go to every single day, and he's not there anymore. And I'm watching these other kids play in the slide and play through the little tube things, and I'm just thinking, like, Romeo should be right there. Like, why isn't he there? And I was just so confused. It did not make sense to me. Just couldn't comprehend it. And at this point, we're still in California, where the accident happened. We're still living in the same place. And Romeo's dad, so we started grieving in different ways. His dad, he turned into a machine, I think, and turned to work. And so that was his outlet, and that's how he was able to get through the day. And I was grateful for that to a sense, because that gave me time to be by myself and to feel everything I could. But also, like, it was so isolating being pregnant and feeling alone like that. I mean, I'm away from family and friends, and I'm disconnected from my partner, and I'm pregnant while grieving my son. Like, it was the loneliest time period of my whole life.
Yeah. It's hard for me to hear. I hear.
I didn't know you yet.
Yeah, but I think there are people out there too that their person, their loved one has experienced trauma or experienced hard things that they weren't able to be there for. Like, I hear you talk about that, and with every part of my body, I want to go give that girl a hug. Like, and the fact that you felt that alone, right?
Yeah, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And at this time period, his dad and I, we were going to therapy. And we were going to relationship therapy, and we were working on some grief stuff in there, but it wasn't clicking for him and I. And We also had several time periods where we were sleeping in separate rooms. I would go and stay with friends at their homes. And I'm like 6 months pregnant with my daughter. And finally, by the time of the birth, we actually had an at-home birth. So that was pretty cool for me, to be able to feel all of that. Like I really just wanted to be able to feel it. And so we did this at-home birth at Romeo's, their dad's parents' home in the basement. And like, this is such a good example of me feeling like the extreme joy and miracle of life while grieving my loss. I remember I was staring up at a photo of Romeo as I was in one of the deepest contractions for my daughter.
And you took 2 ibuprofen.
Oh yeah. Like, I was just on ibuprofen for this. It was really intense. And I remember just like screaming the pain and screaming out the joy and all of it. It was just like, so it was pretty gnarly. It was pretty cool.
You're a badass.
Thank you.
But the beauty in that physical release, right? Yeah. Of maybe the moments in that year following the accident that you weren't able to cry. You've told me the times where you're like, I wish I could have a meltdown right now. Like, I wish I could break open and scream. And now you're giving birth on an ibuprofen and just like, let me feel this pain.
Exactly.
And let me yell and scream.
Exactly. Yeah. A lot of people at that point, they didn't understand why I wanted to have an at-home birth. I think a lot of it is people, like, just because it's not the normal here, especially. So you're not used to it. You know, you're going to doubt it a little bit. You're going to worry about it. But then also because they were worried for safety reasons. For me, it felt like I wanted to feel something. I wanted to feel it. Like, I don't want to be on all the drugs. Like, I want to feel everything I can. And I wasn't at this time worried about the safety. Like, I knew she would be fine.
Yeah. It's such a bold choice by you. Like, I say badass and I mean it. But I want to ask a question that I've actually never thought here. Do you feel like you did that to punish yourself almost?
No. I remember I wanted to be able to feel it because I was having such a hard time feeling the loss of my son. I wanted to be able to feel the pain of the creation of my daughter.
It's so fascinating because we've talked about the anesthesia, we've talked about the numbness, right? And most people choose to go be numb, to go have that experience of giving birth.
Yeah.
And you made the choice of like, no, the last thing I want is anesthesia. I want to be fully there and present in it.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Yeah.
Let's now talk about, you were feeling lonely at this time, and your relationship, like you said, you always struggled with connection. You never fully committed to each other, but you did try to make it work, right? So talk through that decision and that process of ending things.
Yeah, so it was really hard. I say this a lot, but I felt like I was committed in a non-committed relationship for 6.5 years, right? Because we were accidentally pregnant together. We never fully were able to choose each other, but we had that basis of love. You know, it started from a friendship. Like, he was my best friend. And I always felt like if the circumstances were better, or if he was more healed, or if I was more healed. Another thing too is I always saw the best of him. And I felt like during this time, I was not only grieving my son, but I was grieving the loss of my relationship and all that could have been, all that could have beens.
That's interesting. I think maybe for other people that are in relationships or have been in relationships that can relate to that, of like, you see the best in this person.
Yeah.
Obviously there's something that made you fall in love and, start at the first place, but when the reality doesn't meet the hope or the expectation, what's that like?
It just felt like I was like trudging in broken water. Like I kept wanting to fix the relationship. I kept hoping, I kept trying. And when you don't have two people who are both willing to put in the work and both seeing the same vision, like it's not cohesive. And so for me, when I felt like it was only me that was really trying to work on the relationship, where he was working on finances, right? He was trying to get the finances for the family, which I understood. It just wasn't working for us.
Yeah. Now, I think that's an interesting point because you talk about like mourning what could have been, which I think is the case in any divorce or any serious relationship that comes to an end, of like the reality of leaving that relationship and knowing, well, that's Amara's dad, and you won't be spending holidays together or having the happy, perfect family that we think.
Yeah.
And so you kind of mourn all those different versions of could have beens. Have you felt that you've done that same thing with Romeo?
Totally. It's honestly really hard for me to, not really hard, but it's sad sometimes for me to look at your relationship with your mom, because the way you talk about your mom and how sweet you are to her, and I can just see your guys' bond and the way you love her, and it makes me want so much to have that grown-up relationship with Romeo too. And you're just such a mama's boy, and I just know you would have been too. So yeah, like I am mourning that grown-up relationship with him. I'm mourning, he would be 5 years old today. You know, he would be that older brother to Amara, and I never got to see that. So something that's interesting is you and Amara never got to meet him physically. You know, Amara definitely has a relationship with him spiritually. It's crazy. She says his name all the time, and sometimes she'll just randomly, this just started happening, she'll randomly be pointing at the air above our heads and be saying, Romeo, and Romeo's playing and laughing and calling him brother. And so it's cute, but yeah, mourning all of the different aspects. And I think for a lot of people, a trap that they get in within their relationship is they hold so hard on the could be's that it makes them unable to see the reality of what they're in. Like, I easily could have stayed in that relationship for years. I don't think we would have ended up together. I think I would have figured it out eventually. But like, you know, it was my normal and it's what was comfortable to me. And leaving him was one of the scariest things I'd ever done.
Let's talk about that. What made you make that decision, and what was that process like of getting yourself over that hump?
Right. So we had Amara, and at this point we are still like moving around everywhere. We're living in California. We're living in his parents' basement, whatever. And his work season was really like a lot on him. Like, he was just always working. He was always gone. I remember I was at home by myself with the newborn baby, and I don't have a car. And we're in California away from family and friends, and he is on like a 12-hour workday. He doesn't get home until 11 o'clock at night. And so, yeah, that was really, really hard. After his work season had ended, he was in solar. After his work season ended, I remember telling him very seriously, I said, I'm going to give you 3 months. I need you to prioritize me and the baby for these 3 months, or else I'm gone. And, you know, I didn't feel like he heard me. Didn't feel like he got it. Said it several times. So we go back to live at his parents' house. We're in the basement, and I'm even having conversations with his parents too, letting them know that I gave him 3 months. We're sleeping in separate bedrooms at the time, and he was very talented with his work. Like, he was good at it, and he had earned a vacation. So we actually were 2 months in. We were on a work trip. And this was the first time it was just him and I away from the baby who was staying with his parents. And it also was Romeo's birthday. Romeo's birthday is December 1st. And so we're in Cancun for his birthday. We're on a beach. I remember we did like this really cute tribute on the sand. We made a butterfly in the sand. And that was like really sweet bonding time for us together to have that. And it's the first time we had really been able to connect since everything had happened. And so we're connecting about Romeo. We're going over memories. We're crying. At this point, we're in the hotel room together. And it felt like he finally had his guard down with me. He was finally open with me. And he looks at me and he asks me, "Are we going to be together forever?" And I just felt this resounding no come out of me. I just knew, like, no. And I actually believed myself. And he looked at me and his response was, "I thought I had another month."
No comment.
But yeah, so it was crazy because I was planning on separating with him and breaking up with him, ending the 6 years of our relationship, the father of my 2 kids, on his work trip on Romeo's birthday. No, I was not planning that. Had I already grieved our relationship and already emotionally moved on? Yes, I'd been moved on for a while. But no, I wasn't planning that. And so I remember leaving the hotel room. I got on my bike and I'm heading back towards the beach. And this blue monarch butterfly follows me to the beach. And in that moment, I realized Romeo helped me leave his dad.
What does that mean to you?
It just shows me like Romeo has been such a key player since the accident and before of all the major parts of my life. Like he's literally been co-creating my life with me. He's the reason I'm sitting here in front of you. He's the reason we're doing this show. He's the reason I left his dad. And the relationship that I have with that little boy today is just, I think, so incredible. And I'm so thankful.
Yeah. This episode's obviously heavy.
Yeah.
And the goal wasn't to try to teach from this or share, here's what we know now. Like it's actually okay just to share the rawness of that. And I think it's so brave of you, one, but also helpful for those that are experiencing that, might experience that someday, or someone who knows someone that's experiencing that and doesn't fully know how to relate or know what to say. Now, in the next episode, we are going to get into more of how Romeo plays a role in your life, how you connect with him today, how, like, through Romeo, your relationship with the higher power and God has transformed, and what a lot of people look to you as, you know, such light and a leader and a voice of reason for. Before I do that, I want to just ask a couple things. One, for anyone that knows someone who's in an I can't imagine time, and they can imagine it, right? What advice would you give to them of how can they best support those people and love them and stand by them in their hardest hour?
That's a good question. For anybody who knows somebody who is in their I can't imagine moment, I would tell them to, one, lose any judgments, perceptions, and projections of how you think this person should be feeling and how their trauma should be showing up for them. Because unless you actually go through it yourself, you cannot even begin to imagine what that's going to look like. So be there for them by not judging them. And also just check in on them. Like, let them know you're thinking of them. Let them know that you're loving them. And let them know that you're there, because they do need support and they need to know that they're held and carried no matter what their trauma looks like, no matter what their emotions are looking like on the outside. You do not know what's going on the end.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing this. It's really hard.
I have so much appreciation and gratitude to you for helping me share this story and helping me guide through today's episode. This was obviously something that's been really, really hard to do. And it's not easy. I know it's not easy for you as my partner to watch, how grief plays out for me, but to literally take this on as an assignment to do, like, thank you. It's the greatest gift you will have ever given me.
You're welcome. I love you. All right, we're going to be done with this one.